Officer Daniel Reed had been on the force for more than 10 years. In that time, he had seen almost everything. Car accidents, petty thefts, domestic disputes, and a few dangerous situations that had left their marks on him. On a quiet weekday morning, the streets of the small suburban town seemed peaceful. Birds chirped, leaves rustled in the light breeze, and the sun cast a warm glow over the neighborhoods. Daniel's patrol car cruised slowly down Maple Street. He liked this time of day. It felt calm, almost normal, like nothing serious was going to happen. As he drove past a familiar row of houses, something caught his attention. A car was pulled slightly to the side near a stop sign, and the driver seemed to be fidgeting. Daniel slowed down and squinted through the windshield. Inside, he saw a woman trying to manage a baby seat in the passenger side, with a toddler in the back seat holding a small backpack. Groceries were scattered across the front passenger seat. Her hands moved quickly as if she were trying to juggle 100 things at once. Daniel's instincts immediately went on alert. It was the kind of situation that could go wrong quickly. He decided to pull the car over, thinking it might be a simple traffic stop, but he wanted to make sure everything was safe. Lavra Thompson, the woman in the car, was already feeling the stress of her day. She was a single mother, responsible for her 2 young children, and mornings like this were always hectic. That day had been worse than usual. She had left the house on time, but traffic delays and a last-minute call from her older child's school meant she was running behind. All she wanted was to get her children to school and be on her way to work. She didn't notice the patrol car pulling behind her until the flashing lights. Reflected in her rearview mirror, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She signaled and pulled over carefully, making sure the car was fully stopped and the children were safe. As Daniel approached, Lavra rolled down her window. "Good morning, officer," she said, keeping her tone polite but wary. The officer's presence felt heavy. His posture was stiff, his hand resting on the grip of his service weapon. She had seen that look before on television, in news stories, and even in her own neighborhood, but experiencing it firsthand made her stomach churn. Daniel's eyes scanned the car. The baby seat, the groceries, the slightly frazzled mother trying to calm her toddler. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but something in her movements made him pause. Perhaps it was the way her hands trembled as she adjusted the rearview mirror or the quick glances she cast toward the back seat. Daniel didn't know her. He didn't know what she had been through that morning or what challenges she faced as a single mother balancing work, school runs, and household responsibilities. All he saw was a driver who might be hiding something. "License and registration, please," Daniel said, his voice firm but not yet hostile. Lavra reached slowly for her wallet, keeping her hands visible at all times. Her fingers shook slightly as she handed over her documents. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked gently. She wanted to cooperate, to show that she was following the law, but she also wanted to understand why she was being stopped. Daniel took the documents and examined them carefully. He asked a few routine questions, the kind that should have felt normal and procedural, but there was something about his tone that made Lavra tense up. It was sharp, impatient, as if he expected her to slip up or lie. She answered politely, explaining that she had been running late to pick up her children and hadn't noticed the stop sign violation. She tried to keep her voice steady, but inside she felt a wave of fear. The officer's hand on his weapon didn't help. It was a symbol of authority, yes, but also a reminder of how quickly things could escalate. Daniel glanced at the children in the back seat. The toddler was looking out the window, unaware of the tension in the front. The baby in the car seat was fussing quietly, as if sensing the unease in the air. Daniel's mind raced through the scenarios he had learned in training. Traffic stops could turn dangerous quickly. People could panic. Situations could escalate. He reminded himself to stay calm, to follow protocol. But there was a tension that seemed to hum in the space between them. Laura's heart was pounding. She had been stopped before, yes, but never like this. She knew how to be polite, how to follow instructions, how to stay calm, but the way Daniel approached her felt different. She had read stories of people who had cooperated fully yet found themselves in trouble. She felt vulnerable, exposed, and unsure of what might happen next. Yet she tried to maintain her composure. "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't mean to cause any trouble," she said. Her voice was calm, respectful, but there was an underlying tension that she couldn't hide. Daniel nodded slightly, almost as if acknowledging her words, but the edge in his tone remained. He asked her a few more questions, standard procedure, but each question felt like it carried a weight of suspicion. Lavra answered honestly, trying not to say anything that could be misinterpreted. She explained where she had been coming from, why she was late, and how she had been managing her children's morning routine. Her words were sincere, heartfelt, but Daniel seemed focused on details that didn't matter. Small inconsistencies that he could have easily overlooked. As they spoke, neighbors began to notice. Some looked out from their windows, curious about the interaction. One or two people stepped onto their porches, watching quietly. The scene was ordinary on the surface, a routine traffic stop, but the tension was palpable. Lavra felt a mix of fear and frustration. She was trying to do everything right, to follow the law, to keep her children safe, and yet the officer's attitude made her feel like she was being accused of something far more serious than a minor traffic violation. Daniel, on the other hand, was trying to balance caution with protocol. He had to ensure safety, not just for himself, but for the children and the driver. He had been trained to anticipate risks, to act decisively, but sometimes the pressure made him appear harsher than necessary. His eyes scanned the vehicle repeatedly, checking the car seat, the back seat, the driver, and any potential threats. It was standard training, but in that quiet suburban morning, it felt out of place. Lavra, sensing the tension, tried to stay calm and cooperative. She kept her hands visible, answered each question honestly, and attempted to explain the circumstances of her morning. She wanted to de-escalate the situation, to show that she was not a threat, that she was simply a mother trying to manage a complicated life. Her voice remained steady, even as her mind raced with possibilities of what could go wrong. The moment seemed to stretch on, minutes feeling like hours. Daniel handed back her documents briefly, only to hold on to them again. He questioned her about small details, not with the intent of being cruel, but because his training demanded thoroughness. Laura's patience was tested, but she refused to let fear control her. She spoke clearly, respectfully, and honestly, trying to convey that she was just a person trying to do her best in a challenging situation. The children in the back seat fidgeted, sensing their mother's stress. Lavra offered small reassurances, whispered kind words to keep them calm. It was a juggling act, balancing her own fear with the need to comfort her children. Daniel watched quietly, noting her attempts to manage the situation, yet he remained cautious. The encounter, though routine in nature, carried a weight that neither of them had expected that morning. The sun continued to rise, casting longer shadows on the street. Birds chirped, and the quiet hum of early morning traffic filled the background. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed normal, peaceful, unaware of the tension playing out in the car and on the sidewalk. Lavra took a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever might come next. Daniel, aware of the responsibility on his shoulders, prepared to make a judgment, knowing that even a small misstep could have consequences far beyond this quiet street. Neither of them knew that this encounter, starting as a simple traffic stop, was about to spiral into an event that would change both of their lives. Laura's courage, composure, and quick thinking would soon become central to the unfolding story. Daniel's decisions in the next few minutes would have repercussions that could end a career and raise questions about how authority is exercised and how responsibility is weighed in moments of tension. The first part of this story ends here, capturing the uneasy calm, the human tension, and the beginning of a confrontation that seemed ordinary but held the seeds of something much larger. Both Lavra and Daniel are poised on the edge of decisions, unaware that this day would be remembered far beyond the quiet street where it all began. Lavra Thompson felt a wave of anxiety wash over her as Officer Daniel Reed continued his questioning. She had tried to remain calm during the first part of the stop, but now his tone seemed sharper, more impatient. He asked her to explain exactly why she had been at the stop sign so late in the morning, why her car had swerved slightly, and why her children were not fully buckled in. Every question, though routine in an officer's eyes, felt like an accusation to Lavra. She explained everything as clearly and honestly as possible, hoping that her words would be enough to satisfy him. The toddler in the back seat squirmed and fidgeted, tugging on the straps of his backpack and looking out the window at the passing cars. Lavra offered a quick reassurance, a gentle smile, and a soft voice to calm him down. The baby in the front seat began to fuss, sensing the tension in the air. Lavra shifted slightly to soothe the infant, her hands moving quickly but carefully. She felt a pang of fear. She knew how quickly misunderstandings could escalate in encounters with law enforcement. She tried to keep her voice steady, repeating that she had been in a hurry to pick up her children and that she meant no harm. Daniel watched carefully, his training kicking in. He had been in situations where drivers became defensive, aggressive, or even violent. Though Lavra appeared calm, he couldn't ignore the possibility that something was amiss. He asked more questions, his voice firm. "Ma'am, I need to know exactly why your children are not properly secured." Lavra explained that in the rush of the morning, one of the straps had loosened and she had just adjusted it. Her words were honest, but Daniel remained unconvinced. He was cautious, remembering his training that told him to anticipate risk at all times. As the questioning continued, Lavra reached for her phone, intending to make a note of the encounter for her own records. In her mind, it wasn't about confrontation, it was about safety and accountability. Daniel saw the movement and instinctively stepped closer, misinterpreting her action as reaching for a weapon. He called out, his voice commanding her to keep her hands visible and not to touch anything. Lavra froze for a moment, understanding the miscommunication but also fearing what might happen if she moved. The small suburban street began to notice. A neighbor came out onto their porch, holding a cup of coffee, curious about the commotion. Another person paused while walking their dog, watching the situation from a distance. The scene, though ordinary, felt tense. Lavra tried to explain that she was only trying to check her phone to make a quick call, to ensure her children were safe and that she had a record of the interaction. Daniel listened but remained wary. He had learned to be alert, and in that alertness, he sometimes overestimated risk. Laura's heart raced as she felt the fear of what could go wrong. She remembered stories she had read about traffic stops that escalated unnecessarily. She thought of the advice given by other parents in her neighborhood to stay calm, to comply with the officer's instructions, and to document everything. She kept her hands where Daniel could see them, spoke clearly, and tried to show through her body language that she posed no threat. Every word was measured, every movement deliberate. Daniel's mind was a whirlwind of protocols and possibilities. He thought of past encounters where drivers had hidden contraband, attempted to flee, or become aggressive. In his line of work, even the smallest oversight could have serious consequences. Yet he also knew that he had to differentiate between genuine threats and ordinary citizens. Lavra appeared calm, compliant, and honest, yet his instincts told him to stay cautious. The tension between protocol and human judgment weighed heavily on him. The toddler in the back seat tugged at the window shade, drawing Daniel's attention for a moment. He saw the fear in the child's eyes, mirrored in Laura's. The scene reminded him that this was not just a traffic stop. These were real people, vulnerable and dependent on his judgment. He paused briefly, realizing that his tone and actions could have lasting effects on this family. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, yet he remained vigilant. Lavra, sensing a small window of opportunity, tried to reason with Daniel. "Officer, I'm just trying to get my children to school safely. I understand you are doing your job, and I respect that. Please, I'm not a threat." Her words were calm, deliberate, and heartfelt. She hoped that appealing to his human side would ease the tension. Daniel nodded slightly, acknowledging her words but still maintaining a cautious distance. He needed to be sure that the situation was under control before allowing it to conclude peacefully. The sun climbed higher, casting a warm light across the street, yet the air felt heavy with unspoken tension. Laura's mind raced, thinking of ways to prevent escalation. She remembered the advice to document interactions and protect her children at all costs. Quietly, she opened her phone, intending to record the conversation in case she needed evidence of her conduct and the officer's behavior. Daniel's attention was drawn to the phone again, and he raised his voice slightly, insisting that she keep her hands visible. Lavra paused, her fingers hovering over the screen, and slowly explained that she was only making a record of the encounter. She kept her voice calm, measured, and respectful. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some expressing concern. They could see a mother trying to handle a stressful situation while an officer stood close, authoritative and tense. The presence of bystanders added another layer of complexity. Daniel was aware of the witnesses, knowing that any misstep could be scrutinized, yet he also had to manage the immediate risk in front of him. Every movement, every word was analyzed and considered in his mind, weighing safety against fairness. Lavra continued to communicate calmly, trying to humanize herself in Daniel's eyes. She shared briefly about her morning struggles, the rush to get her children to school, and the challenges of being a single mother managing multiple responsibilities. She hoped that this transparency would create a sense of trust, showing that she was cooperative and had no hidden agenda. Daniel listened, aware that her words were genuine, yet still cautious. He knew that empathy was important, but so was vigilance. As the interaction stretched on, the tension built subtly. Every instruction Daniel gave was followed precisely by Lavra, but he remained alert, his eyes scanning the car, the street, and the children. He reminded himself that situations like this required careful attention. Laura's calm demeanor was a positive sign, yet he had to remain observant for any unexpected behavior. The balance between trust and caution was delicate, and both were acutely aware of the stakes. Laura's mind was focused on keeping the situation from escalating. She knew that anger, frustration, or sudden movements could make things worse. Her voice remained steady, her hands visible, and her movements deliberate. She soothed her children, whispered reassurances, and tried to project calm and composure. Her heart pounded, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. She understood that in this moment, patience and clarity were her strongest tools. Daniel, meanwhile, thought about the potential outcomes. He knew that in his career, one small decision could have long-lasting consequences. He had to balance caution with fairness, authority with empathy. His instincts were on high alert, but he also recognized the human aspect of the encounter. This was a mother, not a criminal, and his actions would reflect not only on himself but on the department as a whole. Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Lavra continued to respond to questions calmly, explain her situation honestly, and manage her children. Daniel remained vigilant, questioning, observing, and making calculations about risk and safety. The air between them was tense but controlled. Both were aware of the delicate balance. Knowing that any wrong move could change the course of this encounter, the street remained quiet, punctuated only by the soft sounds of traffic in the distance and the occasional rustle of leaves. Neighbors watched, some with concern, others with curiosity. The ordinary scene of a traffic stop had transformed into a moment of high stakes, where human judgment, composure, and empathy would play a critical role. Laura's ability to remain calm and Daniel's ability to balance caution with fairness set the stage for what would come next in this story. Lavra Thompson felt a small bead of sweat run down her temple as Officer Daniel Reed continued his questioning. The tension in the air had become almost tangible. She could feel her pulse in her throat, and the babies in the car fidgeted nervously. The toddler kept asking questions in a quiet voice, sensing that something was wrong, while the baby in the front seat grew restless. Lavra spoke softly, reassuring both of them, whispering that everything would be fine. She hoped her calmness would transfer to the children, and maybe even to the officer. Her mind raced as she thought about what to do next. She remembered advice from friends and community groups about staying calm and documenting interactions with law enforcement. She realized that recording the encounter might not only protect her but also help her explain the situation if anything went wrong. Slowly, she reached into her pocket and took out her phone, keeping her hands fully visible. She started recording, speaking softly to herself about the date and time so she could remember later. Daniel saw the movement and his eyes narrowed. He was trained to notice subtle gestures, and he misread Laura's action as potentially threatening. His hand instinctively rested closer on the grip of his service weapon, A standard precaution, but one that added weight to the moment. He called out, telling her to keep her hands where he could see them. Lavra froze, realizing the misunderstanding, and slowly raised her hands in the air, showing that she meant no harm. Her voice remained calm as she explained that she was only recording for her own safety and for her children. Daniel hesitated. He wanted to trust her, but his training made him cautious. He looked at the children again and felt the pressure of responsibility. Every decision he made could affect these innocent lives. He reminded himself that his role was to protect, not to escalate unnecessarily. Still, the instinct to stay alert kept him cautious and tense. The quiet street began to attract attention. Neighbors peeked from their windows or stepped out onto their porches, trying to understand what was happening. One man walking his dog slowed down, and a woman holding a baby stroller paused nearby. Lavra noticed the curious onlookers but continued to focus on the officer. She knew that showing panic or frustration could worsen the situation. Instead, she maintained steady breathing, spoke clearly, and kept her hands visible. Lavra decided to call someone she trusted, someone with authority in law enforcement, hoping that a familiar voice might help de-escalate the situation. She dialed the number carefully, her hands still in view. As the call connected, she quietly explained the situation, her words measured, calm, and precise. She told her contact about the traffic stop, the children in the car, and the officer's caution that had started to feel like aggression. The person on the other end promised to help, reassuring her that they would intervene and ensure the encounter remained safe. Daniel noticed her making a call, and his initial suspicion heightened. He stepped a little closer, trying to assert control while keeping an eye on the children. He didn't want to appear aggressive to the neighbors watching, but he also had to ensure that the situation remained secure. He asked Lavra to lower her phone and speak to him directly. Lavra complied, explaining that she was only seeking guidance to make sure her children were safe and that she followed every instruction he had given. Moments passed in tense silence, each second stretching longer than it should have. Laura's voice was calm, explaining everything again, making sure there was no misunderstanding. Daniel's eyes scanned the car once more, noting the baby seat, the toddlers fidgeting, and Laura's careful movements. He was aware that the neighbors were watching, aware that any misstep could escalate the situation beyond the street. He took a deep breath, trying to balance caution with the recognition that Lavra posed no threat. Within minutes, a familiar voice was heard approaching. It was the off-duty officer Lavra had called, someone she trusted to mediate and help. He arrived quickly, seeing the situation from a distance and recognizing the tension immediately. He spoke to Daniel respectfully but firmly, explaining that Lavra was compliant, that her actions were cautious and responsible, and that she had no intention of causing harm. His presence added an unexpected layer of authority that shifted the dynamics instantly. Daniel listened, his posture relaxing slightly. The arrival of a fellow officer, someone with whom he shared training and trust, provided reassurance. He glanced at Lavra again, noting her calm demeanor and the careful way she handled her children. The situation was no longer just a routine traffic stop, but a test of judgment, empathy, and the human side of law enforcement. Neighbors whispered among themselves, some expressing relief that the situation seemed to be calming down. They had watched a mother handle a tense situation with poise, and they admired her bravery. Lavra felt a sense of relief, though her heart was still racing. The intervention of the off-duty officer meant that the tension could be de-escalated. Without further misunderstanding, Daniel and the off-duty officer spoke quietly for a few minutes, discussing the best approach to resolve the situation safely. Lavra remained in the car, keeping her hands visible, continuing to calm her children. The toddler's curiosity returned slowly, and the baby stopped fussing once he felt the shift in energy around them. Lavra whispered gentle words, reassuring both children that everything was all right. The conversation between the officers was brief but decisive. They agreed that Lavra had cooperated fully, that the children were safe, and that no further action was needed beyond a friendly reminder about traffic safety. Daniel, recognizing the effectiveness of the intervention, nodded. He realized that his initial assumptions had been too cautious. That Laura's calmness and honesty had been underestimated, Lavra exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety washing over her. She had navigated a tense situation without confrontation, protecting her children and maintaining composure. The off-duty officer thanked her for handling herself so responsibly, acknowledging her courage and patience. Daniel also spoke, offering a brief apology for the tension, his voice sincere but formal, recognizing the human side of the encounter he had initially overlooked. The children, sensing the shift, began to relax further. The toddler smiled faintly, the baby cooed softly, and Lavra felt a wave of gratitude. She realized that her calm demeanor, her careful communication, and the timely intervention had prevented the situation from escalating. The incident had been a test of patience, communication, and empathy, and she had passed with resilience and dignity. As the patrol car prepared to leave, Daniel reflected on what had happened. He thought about how quickly a routine stop could turn tense, how assumptions and misinterpretations could escalate, and how critical it was to balance caution with human understanding. He realized that Laura's courage, composure, and quick thinking had played a vital role in keeping the encounter safe. Lavra, watching the patrol car drive away, felt a sense of cautious relief. She had managed a potentially dangerous situation with grace, protecting her children while maintaining her dignity. She knew that the day would be remembered not just for the tension but for her ability to stay calm and composed under pressure. Her experience would serve as a reminder to other parents and community members about the importance of patience, documentation, and clear communication in interactions with law enforcement. The street slowly returned to its quiet rhythm, the earlier tension fading into the hum of normal life. Lavra buckled her children properly, adjusted the car seat, and took a few deep breaths. The encounter had been difficult, but she had navigated it with courage and intelligence. She knew that the story did not end here, that there would be consequences and lessons for all involved, but in that moment, she had ensured safety and avoided escalation. This part of the story ends with a crucial turning point, the unexpected intervention that shifted the dynamics, prevented escalation, and highlighted the importance of courage, clear communication, and empathy. Both Lavra and Daniel would carry the lessons of this encounter forward, shaping the next chapters of their lives and careers in ways neither could have anticipated. The encounter had finally calmed down, but Lavra Thompson's mind continued to race. She had managed to stay calm in a stressful situation, but the memory of Daniel Reed's stern demeanor and the edge in his voice left her with lingering anxiety. She buckled the baby securely in the car seat, adjusted the toddler's straps, and made sure everything was as safe as possible. The relief she felt was real, but so was the knowledge that the events of the morning had been more than just a routine traffic stop. Daniel Reed, now alone in his patrol car after the off-duty officer departed, sat quietly, replaying the interaction in his mind. He reflected on every moment, questioning his assumptions and thinking about the decisions he had made. He had approached the stop with caution, as his training demanded, but he recognized that his approach had created unnecessary tension. He realized that Lavra had been cooperative, honest, and careful, yet he had misread her actions at several points. The experience was a wake-up call, showing him how quickly misinterpretations could lead to serious consequences. Back at home later that day, Lavra recounted the incident to a close friend over the phone. She described the tension, the fear she had felt, and the steps she had taken to keep her children safe. Her friend listened intently, expressing concern but also admiration for Laura's composure. Lavra explained how she had documented the encounter and how the off-duty officer's intervention had prevented escalation. She knew that sharing the story was important, not only for her own peace of mind but also to highlight how critical calmness, clear communication, and empathy could be in high-stress situations. Meanwhile, news of the traffic stop began to circulate in small circles. Some neighbors had recorded the interaction on their phones, capturing both the tension and Laura's careful responses. Social media posts began to spread the story, drawing attention to how the situation had been handled. People commented on Laura's courage, expressing concern for her safety and admiration for her ability to manage the encounter with her children. Daniel Reed's actions were also discussed, with some noting the necessity of caution while others questioned whether his approach had been overly aggressive. The local police department received multiple calls from citizens expressing concern. Internal Affairs reviewed the incident after videos were submitted by bystanders. The recordings showed a clear picture of what had happened. Lavra had remained calm, followed instructions, and acted responsibly, while Daniel had approached the situation with a level of caution that, in hindsight, appeared excessive. The investigation was thorough, examining not only the actions of Daniel but also the effectiveness of departmental training and procedures in handling routine stops. Daniel himself was notified that an internal review would take place. He felt a mix of emotions: anxiety about his career, regret for the unnecessary tension he had caused, and reflection on the human side of law enforcement that sometimes gets overshadowed by protocol. He reviewed the recordings himself, noting where he could have de-escalated sooner and how Laura's calm demeanor had prevented the situation from becoming dangerous. The experience left a lasting impression on him, reinforcing the importance of balancing caution with empathy and understanding. Lavra, on the other hand, found herself becoming a quiet advocate within her community. She shared her story with parenting groups and neighborhood meetings, emphasizing the importance of staying calm during interactions with authority figures, documenting events, and prioritizing the safety of children. Her story became a case study in how ordinary people can manage extraordinary situations with intelligence and composure. She encouraged others to prepare for similar scenarios, not out of fear, but as a means of empowerment and awareness. The department also used the incident as a learning opportunity. Training sessions incorporated the video footage, highlighting both what went well and what could have been handled differently. Officers were reminded of the importance of empathy, communication, and recognizing the human element in every encounter. The focus was not on punishment alone, but on improving procedures, ensuring that officers could maintain authority without unnecessarily escalating routine situations. As weeks passed, Daniel Reed faced increasing scrutiny. While some colleagues defended his caution, others pointed out that the incident could have been handled more effectively. Meetings were held with Internal Affairs, reviewing protocols and discussing the potential for further training. Daniel had to reflect deeply on his approach and acknowledge that his initial assumptions had amplified tension unnecessarily. The review became a turning point in his career, forcing him to confront how his decisions affected not only civilians but also public perception of law enforcement. Lavra continued her daily routine, taking her children to school and managing her household, but the experience lingered in her mind. She had been shaken but strengthened by the ordeal. Her composure had protected her family, and her actions had inspired others in her community. She also followed the internal review process closely, hoping that it would result in positive change and accountability. She knew that the outcome could affect not only her family, but the broader approach to community policing in her town. The community's reaction was overwhelmingly supportive. Local news outlets reported on the incident, highlighting Laura's bravery and the lessons learned from the encounter. Citizens discussed the balance between caution and empathy in law enforcement, praising the department for taking the situation seriously and using it as an opportunity to improve. Parents in particular resonated with Laura's story, recognizing the challenges of protecting children while navigating potentially tense encounters with authority figures. Daniel Reed received feedback from his supervisors and colleagues. The review emphasized accountability, reflection, and the importance of human-centered policing. He was encouraged to attend additional training sessions focused on communication, de-escalation techniques, and understanding community dynamics. The process was difficult, forcing him to confront mistakes and acknowledge the impact of his actions. But it also provided a chance for growth and improvement. Lavra reflected on the lessons she had learned from the morning of the traffic stop. She realized the value of remaining calm under pressure, documenting events for personal safety, and seeking support when needed. She recognized the importance of empathy, understanding, and clear communication in preventing misunderstandings. Most importantly, she understood that ordinary people could influence the outcome of tense situations through composure, preparation, and courage. The incident left a lasting mark on both Lavra and Daniel. For Lavra, it was a reminder of the strength required to protect her family and advocate for her safety. For Daniel, it was a turning point in his career, highlighting the need for balance between caution and humanity in every encounter. Both carried forward lessons about responsibility, communication, and the impact of decisions made in moments of tension. This part of the story concludes with the fallout and reflection that followed the incident. It emphasizes the importance of accountability, the human side of law enforcement, and the courage required to navigate challenging encounters. The experiences of Lavra Thompson and Daniel Reed serve as powerful reminders of how composure, empathy, and awareness can shape outcomes, influence community perceptions, and lead to meaningful change. The days following the traffic stop were tense and reflective for both Lavra Thompson and Officer Daniel Reed. Lavra returned to her routine of managing her household, getting her children ready for school, and going to work, but the memory of that morning lingered. She felt a mix of relief, pride, and lingering anxiety. She had managed the encounter without escalating it, had kept her children safe, and had navigated the situation with composure and intelligence. Yet she understood that the lessons extended far beyond her personal experience. The incident had become a reminder of the fragile balance between authority and humanity, and how crucial it was to maintain respect and understanding in every interaction. Daniel Reed, meanwhile, faced a career-defining moment. Internal Affairs had concluded their review, highlighting the need for accountability and emphasizing the importance of proper judgment in routine stops. The review found that his approach had been overly cautious and unnecessarily aggressive in tone, although no malicious intent was identified. Daniel had to confront the reality that his decisions had caused fear and stress for a civilian and her children. The process was humbling and challenging, forcing him to reflect deeply on how training, instinct, and empathy must work together in the field. Lavra found herself contacted by journalists and local community groups who had seen or heard about the incident. Many were curious about how she had handled the situation, how she had remained calm, and how she had managed to protect her children while under pressure. Lavra spoke candidly, emphasizing the importance of composure, preparation, and clear communication. She wanted her story to inspire and educate others, particularly parents and caregivers who might face similar encounters with law enforcement. Her message was simple: stay calm, prioritize safety, and seek support if needed. The community's response was overwhelmingly supportive. Neighbors, parents, and local leaders praised Laura's courage and patience. Many expressed relief that the situation had not escalated further and admiration for the way she handled herself. The incident sparked broader conversations about police-civilian interactions, the need for empathy, and the importance of de-escalation techniques. Citizens began discussing the value of communication and the role each person plays in maintaining safety and understanding during tense moments. Daniel Reed faced intense scrutiny from both his department and the public. Colleagues offered support and advice, but he knew that he needed to reflect on his own actions. Training sessions focused on communication, situational awareness, and empathy became part of his professional development. He realized that authority without understanding could cause harm, and that every encounter had a human element that demanded respect. Daniel made a commitment to improve, recognizing that accountability was not just about discipline, but about growth and learning from mistakes. Lavra continued to participate in community discussions, speaking at workshops and local meetings about her experience. She emphasized how small actions like remaining calm and documenting events could have a significant impact on outcomes. Parents, caregivers, and community members listened intently, recognizing the relevance of her story to everyday life. Laura's experience became an educational tool, illustrating both the challenges of high-stress situations and the power of human composure and intelligence. In parallel, Daniel began to engage in self-reflection and mentorship. He worked with trainers and community liaison officers to understand how better to interact with civilians, particularly in routine traffic stops. He studied case examples and scenarios, learning to recognize cues of fear, stress, and misunderstanding. Over time, he developed a more balanced approach, combining caution with empathy and understanding. The incident with Lavra Thompson remained a pivotal moment in his career, reminding him that professional growth often comes through confronting one's own misjudgments. The local police department also took broader lessons from the incident. Policies were reviewed and updated to emphasize de-escalation, clear communication, and empathy in interactions with civilians. Officers were trained to assess situations holistically, considering not just potential threats but the human dynamics involved. The goal was to prevent unnecessary escalation, improve public trust, and ensure that authority was exercised responsibly and fairly. The Lavra Thompson case became a reference point in these discussions, demonstrating the importance of both civilian and officer behavior in shaping outcomes. For Lavra, life gradually returned to a sense of normalcy, but she remained mindful of the lessons from that morning. She continued to prioritize safety, communication, and preparation in her daily routines. The experience had strengthened her confidence and resilience, reminding her of the inner strength required to navigate challenging situations. She shared her story quietly and purposefully, ensuring that her experiences could educate and empower others, especially those who might feel vulnerable in similar circumstances. Daniel Reed, while dealing with the consequences of the internal review, also found a path forward. He accepted the findings, recognizing that his initial actions had contributed to unnecessary tension. He sought additional training and guidance, aiming to rebuild trust with the community and improve his professional skills. The incident served as a constant reminder that authority carries responsibility, that judgment must be balanced with empathy, and that understanding the human element in every interaction is essential. Over time, both Lavra and Daniel experienced the long-term impact of the traffic stop. Lavra became a quiet symbol of resilience and composure in her community. People admired her ability to remain calm under pressure, protect her children, and communicate clearly in a tense situation. Daniel's career, while challenged, evolved through reflection and training, leading to a deeper understanding of the human side of law enforcement. Both lives were forever changed, not through conflict, but through lessons learned and the choices made in a single, tense encounter. The story of that morning ended with clarity and resolution. Lavra had protected her family, maintained composure, and turned a potentially dangerous situation into an example of human resilience and intelligence. Daniel had confronted his misjudgments, accepted accountability, and taken steps toward professional and personal growth. The community learned valuable lessons about empathy, communication, and the delicate balance between authority and human understanding. In the end, the incident was more than a routine traffic stop. It was a moment that highlighted courage, reflection, and accountability. It demonstrated how ordinary people, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, can navigate tension with intelligence and composure. It showed how authority figures can learn, adapt, and grow from moments of misjudgment. Both Lavra Thompson and Daniel Reed carried forward lessons that would shape their lives, their careers, and their interactions with others for years to come, leaving behind a story of resilience, responsibility, and the enduring importance of empathy in human interactions.